Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Bella Gamer, and today I have a very interesting video. Now, I'm still working on the last remaster video, which is going to be the ancestry changes. Holiday season, I've been busy with some family stuff. This has been a very rough year for my family, so, I need to dedicate time where it needs to go. But with a recent article that came out by Dicebreaker about the Adventure Time game being changed from its yes and system to D&D 5e, which isn't actually 100% the case, but this is the impetus that created this video. So today I'm going to be talking about the D&D-ification, I guess, if that's a word. It's not, but I'm making it one now, of tabletop and what that means for the industry. So, first of all, what do I mean by D&Dification? Well, predominantly it's TTRPGs that rather than producing their own system or using a much more generalized system, they're using a system that is pretty much exactly like D&D 5e's base system. D&D's base system is you get a modifier as you level up in the game that you add to all your stats, and then you add your attribute modifiers to skill checks or attack rolls or whatever, and do something that gives you an advantage on a check. You would roll twice and take the better result. And conversely, if something puts you at a disadvantage, you'd roll twice and take the worst result. Now, there's a variety of ways this shifts and changes depending on what is adapting the system, but more or less it lies on these basics. So, D&Dification is something that is making another type of product become more like D&D 5e, or maybe even older versions of D&D, as this is not even exclusive to D&D 5e's content. Heck, Pathfinder First Edition could be considered D&Dification, though it wasn't really anything else. It was a version of D&D that followed more what the players wanted at the time. And for this video, I'm talking more about products that could have released their own system that were unique enough not to need to, but deciding to do so anyway. So let's talk about the Dicebreaker article, shall we? Cryptoic, I can't remember the name exactly. They were producing, or they have a Kickstarter? Yeah, a Kickstarter for their Adventure Time TTRPG, and they changed it recently to go from a yes and system that was being developed for it into D&D 5e, but that's actually not 100% the case. They were always planning on releasing a D&D 5e version of the game, but the yes and was going to be the predominant version, the core version. They've now changed that, and now the core version is the D&D 5e version, and the yes and system is still going to be coming out as additional content. Why would they do this? Why, when they were already developing a system and are continuing to develop a system, are they releasing a 5e mod essentially for their game? And it's for the reason why even Paizo, with their adventure or their Abomination Vaults adventure path, released a 5e version of that path, despite being what many would consider a competitor for D&D. And that's, most people know D&D and are buying D&D books. And the best way to make money in the TTRPG scene right now is inarguably to ship your product as a D&D 5e, third-party content, a homebrew or whatever. This has been the case for a long time now, actually. Even back in the D&D 3 point whatever era of TTRPGs, the same thing was happening. Heck, there are still versions of the D&D 3.0 plus style of game being produced today. It's not necessarily a bad thing to incorporate a rule set for the production of a game. The problem mostly lies in things being associated with Dungeons and Dragons. And problem is a somewhat controversial term, right? It is pretty inarguable the influence on D&D on the market of TTRPGs today. I mean, not a more obvious statement could be made. But the thing is, D&D 5e is the most recognizable version of D&D ever, to any degree. It's not even close. And thus, most people see TTRPGs in general as a form of D&D or an offshoot of D&D. Whether they're right or wrong, it's not really the point. The point is that most people who are looking to get into TTRPGs are going to first be looking at D&D 5e, whether it's actually D&D or a game that utilizes its rule set, but it will always still have that D&D logo associated with it in some form. Now, is this a problem? A little bit of yes and a little bit of no. The more people getting invested in TTRPGs in general will make the general hobby, flourish. I mean, the same thing happened with World of Warcraft. When World of Warcraft got big, there were many World of Warcraft clones. And that lasted for quite a while before we started seeing much more diverse and different types of MMOs, to the point where now, even though World of Warcraft is still one of the biggest MMOs, if not the biggest MMO out on the market to date, there are still plenty that you can play that are very different and don't take from the same systems. D&D is much the same in this way. D&D is very popular, and with its popularity has increased interest in the TTRPG market. In fact, in the last 5 to 6 years, give or take, there has been an increase in interest in other games outside of D&D. Lancer, for instance, released on Kickstarter in April of 2019 and has since its initial release to the public anyway been growing more and more every year, especially with Armor Core coming out and as well a variety of other instances. I'm not going to go into all of them, but the game has been doing really well. And Evil Hat Productions' Blades in the Dark, one of their most popular TTRPGs, came out in 2017 as well. Many of these games and their overall popularity were very much influenced by the influx of new players coming into the TTRPG space, thanks to D&D 5e, though you could say that it could be attributed more to Stranger Things and Critical Role kind of making the game pop for the audience. Nonetheless, it all kind of ties back to D&D. So in this way, you can say that D&D 5e has, in many ways, invigorated the TTRPG community, expanding it well beyond its original numbers and making it much more of a household name. Even now, Moist Critical Charlie is hosting his own D&D campaign as a live play experience on YouTube and Twitch. And he's putting a lot of production value into it. This has been an ongoing thing, as many content creators have been coming out either stating that they've been playing D&D or that they have been prepping on some kind of projects or the like. And it's not for just D&D, though predominantly it does lie in the D&D 5e stratosphere. There are some that do Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and Critical Role has done their own system of Candela Obscura, which does take somewhat heavily from the systems used in Blades in the Dark, which is a derivative already of Powered by the Apocalypse. But still, it's inarguable that whenever you're seeing someone come out about their new TTRPG show, it's predominantly going to be D&D 5e related. And this is good for the sake that many people now are enjoying TTRPGs that didn't before. Many people are enjoying the hobby that I personally enjoy, and I know many of you personally enjoy as well, and more people are being introduced to the art. Many people enjoy the fun craziness of the improv storytelling that has narrative rules that kind of guide the narrative. Now, this is where D&D 5e really comes in strong. While D&D 5e may not be the most robust system, oftentimes putting a lot of weight on the DM to make the game work, having many systems that either don't make sense or don't really lead anywhere, like crafting, monster CR, or the like. What the game does do very well is it gives you enough of a starting point to start telling your adventure. Making characters is not necessarily a very difficult action, at least at first. And as well, the game's overall mechanics are very easy. More often than not, it's just going to be whether a character gets advantage or disadvantage on a system, and then the rest is just easy addition, adding life, subtracting life, what have you. D&D at its general concept is not a very difficult game, though there are arguments, of course, that D&D, due to the many holes in the system, is more difficult to run long term. But that's the thing. Most people are not really running D&D long term enough to come into these problems. And many people, in fact, revel in the fact that D&D is missing so many of these systems to give them a reason to input their own. Many people have been very creative and created many wonderful things around the fact that D&D is just kind of like a half-baked system. And I'm not saying that in necessarily a derogatory or negative fashion. It's just there are many things about the system that sometimes lead nowhere, have no help for the GM, and just enforce or require the GM to make stuff for the system to make it work. I mean, like I mentioned already before, crafting and CR are some of the biggest pitfalls of D&D 5e. But regardless of that, it's a game that's easy enough for people to at least get started. It has good numbers. The game feels fun. Many of the characters' abilities just allow them to do very fun and interesting things, and thus it draws people in. You cannot argue the fact that it draws people in, since so many people have really fallen in love with D&D 5e, even if they're playing very heavily modified versions of the game. That's not the point. The point is that it's the base system. So it makes sense that many, different corporations, Paizo, Evil Hat Productions even, and with this whole Cryptoic Adventure Time debacle, kind of releasing 5e content because it is the biggest part of the market. People are looking into these games, and if you want people to get introduced to your IP, well, it's the best way to go about doing it. Now, of course, there was the OGL debacle at the beginning of the year, and this has caused some companies like Paizo to kind of pull back, even though the Adventure Vaults or the Abomination Vaults is still on the market right now for a D&D 5e version. Still, there are some issues with Wizards of the Coast, and I'm not here to defend them. I did that in a prior video, and even then, I'll state here, I don't like Wizards of the Coast. But what I do like is what they do for the TTRPG community in creating such an expansive IP that gets people genuinely interested in the hobby. I don't think there's anything bad about that part of it. The bad part about it is people are associating D&D with TTRPGs. They are synonymous. Many people, when they're referring even to non-D&D games, call it D&D for the sake of simplicity. And it's hard to tell if this is going to be good or bad in the end. As I said, World of Warcraft created many bad clones before we started having much better and more interesting MMOs. And TTRPGs have been already in this arms race with D&D even before 5e. Paizo, I think, has been putting a very strong foot forward, but even then, as a setting and as a general genre, it's pretty similar to D&D in many ways. Now, Lancer definitely takes a step away and introduces a much more interesting system, as well as Blades in the Dark creating light TTRPGs or, what have you. This is still a really good time for the market because even games that are not D&D 5e, mods are still getting more attention nowadays. I understand for those in the TTRPG community who wants their games to be more prominent in the public eye and to not have D&D just constantly stealing the spotlight. I understand Pathfinder 2nd Edition is my favorite game currently, and I don't like D&D 5e personally. Regardless, it is inarguable that the TTRPG community is the best it's ever been, and it's getting better year by year. I'm not here to argue about whether systems should be making D&D 5e ports or not. I'm not even here to argue about what it means for the market that this is happening. I'm just here to state that whether or not you like it, whether or not you like D&D 5e or not, it's evident that people are interested in D&D and TTRPGs in general. Many of the things that people quote about what they enjoy about their games, about the craziness or the fun, could be done in almost any other system. It's not unique to D&D. The only unique thing about D&D is that it's the one that everyone knows. I believe with time, we're going to see the TTRPG market evolve and change. D&D 5e opened the floodgate to the general populace, and as more and more people are coming in, more and more people are homebrewing D&D 5e, and eventually we're just going to end up with very popular versions of the game that are nothing like the original version. So much so that we might eventually get up to the point where a new IP is formed from the carcass that is D&D 5e that people just enjoy more because it is more thought out. The game appeals to more people, and as well, it just doesn't have some of the nasty corporate hangups that Wizards of the Coast brings to the D&D 5e IP. There are some people who are always going to love D&D, and that's completely fine. It's completely fine that you love D&D 5e as well. That's not what I'm necessarily arguing against. I'm just saying that for the people who are discontent with Wizards of the Coast, justifiably so, or who do not like D&D 5e, like myself, there is hope that the market will expand to give a variety to other types of games, not just D&D. And D&D, I think, will always be in the market. It's too big to fall. If Blizzard couldn't kill World of Warcraft in the 11 years it's been running, then I doubt D&D in its much longer history is going anywhere anytime soon. And maybe D&D will become a better game for the people who enjoy it. And maybe the TTRPG market will become much more of a general market where people can enjoy a variety of games and not just feed one major corporation's monopoly. But that's just my hope. And that's all I really have to say on it. I think D&D is good. I think what it's done for the market is good. And I think that it leaves a lot of room and space for other TTRPGs to grow with the influx of new people. For the people who don't like D&D, there's hope yet. And for the people who do love D&D, then you have nothing but good things to look forward to as more and more people are introduced to the game and iterate upon it and make it a better and better system. But those are just my thoughts and opinions, and I'm sure you'll all let me know yours down in the comments below. And speaking about down in the comments below, while you're down there, leave this video a like so other people get a chance to see it, and as well as subscribe if you want to see more TTRPG content. I do all kinds of different TTRPGs, predominantly Pathfinder 2nd Edition, I admit, but I do cover a lot of Lancer, and as well, I'll be covering other TTRPGs as I come across them. You can even check out my review of Candela Obscura, where everything you need to know about the game is in that 50-minute video. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you all so much for listening to me here today. Not very much to watch, but good luck with your games. Leave the bad luck to me. And I'll see you all next time. Bye.